Hey guys, welcome back to our FCS Dynasty and NCAA Football 2006. Today we're taking a look at the nation, doing a Week 7 recap, and our Week 8 predictions. Now let's take a look at the Sports Illustrated. Hawaii is on the cover. Not a sniff. It says Hawaii improves to conference record of 3-0 with a shutout of SMS. So one of the lower tier teams in their conference, they blew them out. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at the top 25 here and see the final score of that game. And too little too late, San Diego State loses. So we're going to take a look at that as well as we go down the list. Fresno State takes over the number 1 spot. They jump over UTEP, who had a bye week. And Fresno State had an impressive win over New Mexico State, 45-23. Central Michigan won, and there's Hawaii's victory, 49-0. They're 4-1 on the season. Florida Atlantic won, Wyoming, Colorado State, Ball State, Eastern Michigan, and Nevada. That is the top 10. Nevada drops down to number 10 from the 3rd ranked spot as they just lost to Idaho. Army and Navy both lose in the same week. They drop out of the top 10. And Savannah State jumps up to number 15 in the country with their win over Jacksonville State. They are 6-0 on the season, looking very impressive in the ACC Football Conference. Idaho jumps up 4 spots with their win over Nevada. Air Force jumps up 4 spots with their win over Navy. And Bryant is finally ranked after a bye week, of all things. They jump up to the 20th spot. This is the first time they've been ranked in this dynasty. And this is our second FCS school ranked from our group of 12 schools. Mexico State drops to 21st. Montana's back in the rankings. That's good for Dayton. And William & Mary also back in the rankings, so that is also really good for the Bryant Bulldogs. Towson, a different FCS school ranked now. They just beat Richmond 30-3. They're 5-1 on the season out of Conference USA, a very tough conference. San Diego State lost to UNLV 35-21. UNLV finally gets a win over anyone. That's the first win on the season. And the Aztecs drop to 25th. The Heisman watch in the bag. Wyoming's aerial assault has allowed Holly the ability to just be a beast this season, as you'll see his numbers here in a second. But MJ Gator Jr. still number 1 on the Heisman watch list. He has had an impressive season, 22 total touchdowns and nearly 1,500 yards. But Jason Holly, 14 touchdown catches, and that is just ridiculous. Jordan Atkins, 28 touchdown passes. Half of them are to Holly. Riley Cotton, of course, having a great season for the Chippewas. And we got a new face on the Heisman watch list. Jeff Carey, senior halfback out of Eastern Michigan. He's doing pretty well for himself. 16 touchdowns this season. And they just beat UMass 35-7. It's always nice to see some different faces on there. I expect Brandon Allen to get on there eventually as well, the halfback out of Bryant. Let's get into the players of the week. Matt Howell, sophomore quarterback out of Rice, of course, is a beast, and he runs for 269 yards, throws for 177, has 5 total touchdowns. Tony Penn, 22 tackles, 11 for a loss, 5 sacks, and a forced fumble against Southeast Missouri, and that is the right outside linebacker out of Sam Houston State. Those are ridiculous numbers, and he must have been on the field all game. ACC, Dante Cameron, senior quarterback out of Hampton, 5 touchdown passes, 382 yards. Sean Cribbs, their middle linebacker, had 11 tackles, 3 for a loss, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble. That was against NC State. Jared Martin gets player of the week for the Big Ten on offense, 392 yards passing and 4 total touchdowns. Antonio Barnes, of course, had a fantastic game, 5 tackles, forced fumble, a recovery, and a touchdown, and 1 tackle for a loss. The Big 12, Zoomer Speed, 5 total touchdowns, 328 all-purpose yards, a breakout performance for him, and the best of his career. In a 52-49 victory over Nicholls State, and of course Tony Penn is the Defensive Player of the Week for the Big 12. The Big East, Tim Dahl, sophomore quarterback for Harvard, 364 yards, 3 touchdowns against Yale. Ivan Weaver, senior outside linebacker from Dartmouth, had 12 tackles, 5 for loss, 1 sack, and 1 pick in their win over the Brown Bears, 36-31. And the Conference USA, Matt Howell, of course, gets the Offensive Player of the Week. And for the defense, Andy Hart, senior middle linebacker for Tulane, had 10 tackles, 4 for loss, 1 sack, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery in a 63-7 victory. My goodness. Harvey Bosch, senior wide receiver for Army, had 2 touchdown catches, 133 yards. And their left end, Nicholas Norman, had a pretty good day for himself as well. The MAC, New Hampshire quarterback, threw for 379 yards and 3 touchdowns. Dave Sanders. Eric Hall, middle linebacker for the Chippewas, 11 tackles, 5 for loss, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. He was all over the field in their win over Army. Brian Alston, senior halfback for Colorado State, 232 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 29 yards receiving and a touchdown. Eric Perez, 9 tackles, 2 for loss, 1 sack, interception, fumble recovery. Just so many stats for these guys. And that was in a win over Western Kentucky. They won that one 41-7. Corey Johnson, redshirt freshman halfback out of Portland State, in their upset victory over UC Davis, had 138 yards receiving, 118 yards rushing with 2 touchdowns. Reggie Barron out of Northern Arizona had 14 tackles, 5 for loss, and 2 sacks, and a loss to Eastern Washington. That was a close one, 17-13. Luke Clark, Jackson State senior wide receiver, 388 yards on 22 catches with 3 touchdowns. What? John King, Mississippi Valley State Delta Devils, senior outside linebacker, 12 tackles, tackle for loss, forced fumble, fumble recovery, and a win over Arkansas Pine Bluff. Sun Belt, Robert Minor, redshirt senior quarterback, threw for 5 touchdowns, 290 yards. Eric Galloway, sophomore left end for the Demons, had 13 tackles, 6 for loss, 3 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. That was in a close loss to the Appalachian State Mountaineers, 17-12. And the WAC, Rashad Riley, redshirt senior quarterback for Fresno State, 359 yards, 5 touchdowns. Jason Longshore, sophomore outside linebacker for Hawaii, in their 49-0 win, had 2 tackles, a tackle for loss, and a touchdown. We don't know what it was for, if it was an interception return for a touchdown or a fumble recovery. But oh well. Take a look at the conference standings. Fresno State opens conference play with a win over New Mexico State. That was a huge victory. Let's take a look at the ACC. Bryant and Savannah State, of course, at the top of that conference. William and Mary 3rd, and South Carolina State is 4th. The Atlantic looks like it's going to be won by Bryant, as they already have a win over the Tribe. But the Coastal is still up in the air. We got South Carolina State. I can't remember if they play Savannah State this season, but if they do, that game could be a huge one, as well as the Norfolk State game. So the Tigers have not wrapped that one up yet. The Big Ten, huge game in Week 8, as the Dayton Flyers will travel, or they will host the Western Illinois Leathernecks. And that is going to be a showdown of the top 2 teams in the Big Ten. So it is up for grabs here in Week 8. So good luck to Dayton. We will see Jared Martin and Dorian Wura in at quarterback in special formations. So that'll be fun to watch as well. The Big 12, North Dakota State and VMI are at top of that conference. South Dakota State, with their loss to Western Carolina, drops down to 9th in the Big 12. But it's still early. They are 1-1 in conference play. Southeast Missouri State, the only team in the Big 12 with no wins. They're 0-5 this season. Big 12 North looks like this. North Dakota State at the top, and the Big 12 South, VMI up at the top. Now, they do have to play Western Carolina eventually, so that'll be a good one. Big East, Dartmouth at top of that. Nothing too crazy. Now, we did see Harvard finally get a victory last week. Conference USA, UTEP, the only undefeated team left there. Towson is very impressive at 5-1 this season. And they're 2-1 in conference. They've allowed 101 points against them, but they've put up 160 points, so they're doing quite well for themselves this year. And the Phoenix, 0-6 on the season, the only team with no win in Conference USA. The Northeastern Huskies, another team with no wins on the season. They're 0-5. They've allowed 191 points. Navy, of course, looking impressive. We will see them this week as they take on the San Diego Toreros. The MAC, 2 undefeated schools, Central Michigan and Ball State. They are at the top of that conference. Hofstra has actually done pretty well this season, 3-2. And you see UMass, no wins on the season, another winless school, only 59 points scored on the year. Mountain West, I think everybody has a loss in this conference now. New Mexico's only loss was to Georgia, which they almost won that game. So they have been the most impressive school that I've seen so far in this dynasty. And UNLV finally gets a win. Remember, South Dakota State beat them in Las Vegas, Nevada. So they are struggling this season, to say the least. Eastern Kentucky, 1-4. Let's take a look at the Pac-10, the most exciting conference in college football. Cal Poly and Southern Utah are tied for number 1 in the Pac-10. San Diego trailing right behind them. And UC Davis, after a stunning defeat to Portland State, drops to 6th in the conference. And they take on Sacramento State this week. Northern Colorado, 1-5, but they are not dead last in the conference, folks. They've still got a shot. Jacksonville, 3rd in the SEC now. They've strung together a couple wins in a row after starting the season 0-3, but they did lose to Tennessee State, who is number 1 in the SEC. They could have a rematch with them in the SEC championship game if all goes well for the Dolphins. But the Tigers look to have full control of the East. And the West, we got Alabama A&M, the Bulldogs. They're number 1 right now in the West. And Jacksonville already beat Mississippi Valley State, who is number 3. Jacksonville is 2nd. And the Sun Belt, Florida Atlantic is 6-0, and we will see them later on in the season taking on the Jacksonville Dolphins. And you see Texas State 0-7. They've allowed 301 points this season. And Northwestern State 1-5 on the year. Their only victory coming against the Jacksonville Dolphins. Fresno State undefeated, number 1 in the country. And you will see that Boise State has dropped drastically. They are not even ranked anymore. They're 3-2 on the season. Let's take a look at the Week 7 results and my predictions for Week 8. Game number 1, Cal Poly traveled to take on the San Diego Toreros. And I had Cal Poly winning that one 30-20. And it was pretty close to my prediction. It was 34-14. And San Diego really struggled. They had some key mistakes. A personal foul by Demetrius George inside the 10-yard line dropped him back, and I believe they didn't even score on that drive because of it. But Cal Poly was able to pull away in the end. Game number 2, Western Carolina. The Catamounts travel to take on the South Dakota State Jackrabbits, and I had the Jacks winning that one 42-31. The Western Carolina was very impressive and explosive on offense. They scored 63 points, and South Dakota State went for 2 points at the end of the game to try to pull off the win, but they couldn't get it. Lamar Jackson was sacked as he tried to pull up and throw, and the Catamounts would win that one 63-62. And that was a very exciting game, and I enjoyed playing it. Even though they lost, it was still awesome. It was really fun. But game number 3, Jacksonville State Gamecocks traveled to take on the 18th ranked Savannah State Tigers. And I had the Tigers winning 45-17, and it was very close to my prediction. They won it 41-15 over the Gamecocks, and there's really not much to say about the Tigers. They're just too good. Game number 4, the Dayton Flyers traveled to take on Eastern Illinois in a Big Ten game, and Jared Martin gets a second career start. I had Dayton win 38-14. They won 56-24. Jared Martin threw for almost 400 yards. He had a very rocky start. He threw 3 interceptions in the first half, but came back strong and helped the Dayton Flyers pull off the win. And they pulled away at the end there. It was really nice. Game number 5 of Week 7, Jacksonville traveled to take on the Texas Southern Tigers. I had Jacksonville winning that one 42-31, and they actually put up 52 points and won it 52-24. Even without Michael Hines, Ryan Golden led that offense quite well. Mr. Highlight, of course, balled out. Had some return for a touchdown, and had a great day on the ground as well, over 100 yards rushing. Game number 6, Portland State traveled to take on Pac-10 opponent UC Davis, and I had UC Davis win out 38-10, but Owen Black was suspended yet again this season, and Portland State pulls off the upset 42-28 over the Aggies. In game number 7, VMI Cadets finally at full strength on offense this season. They travel to take on the Furman Paladins. who were the top team in the Big 12 at the time. I had VMI winning a close one, 28-20, and they blew out the Paladins 48-3. Cam Sanders was very impressive. It's the first time we saw him since week 1, and I was just very impressed with the offense as a whole. And the final game of week number 7, Nicholls State Colonels traveled to take on the North Dakota State Bison in the Fargo Dome, and this is another Big 12 matchup. I had the Bison winning 35-24 because they looked really impressive the week before this with their huge win where they put up 94 points. But Nicholls State, they had other plans for this game. They had a lot of success running the option, just like Rice had against North Dakota State as well. And the Bison just don't know how to stop it. They need more speed on their defense and maybe some more safeties because it was really rough playing defense against that offense. Even with Nicholls State quarterback, his speed was like a 60, and he was still running all over the Bison. But that's it for the Week 7 recap, guys. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Week 8 predictions. Week 8, Game 1, the Bryant Bulldogs, ranked 20th in the nation, travel to take on the NCAA State Aggies in an ACC game, and I don't think that's going to be close at all. We've seen the Aggies before in this series. Savannah State actually destroyed them. They just blew them up. So I think the Bryant Bulldogs will have the same success, and they'll win 49-10. Game number 2, Northern Colorado travels to take on the Idaho State Bengals, and I got the Bears winning 31-27. Idaho State is not very good, and I think the Bears will get back on track. Game number 3, the Jacksonville Dolphins travel to take on Arkansas Pine Bluff, and I've got Jacksonville winning that one 42-13. I think their offense is going to continue their success, and I think their defense will continue to step up as well. Still looking for a complete game from the Dolphins, and I think this will be it. Game number 4, the 13th ranked Navy midshipmen travel to San Diego to take on the Toreros, and I've got Navy winning that one 24-21. I do think that San Diego will put up a good fight, but I do think Navy has too much depth everywhere, so I think they're going to end up holding off the feisty Toreros and win that game. Game number 5, the Sacramento State Hornets travel to take on the UC Davis Aggies. I have the Aggies winning this one 31-21. If Owen Black gets suspended, I'm expecting another loss because when he is not in the game, that offense is god-awful because the defenses know what they're going to do. They're just going to pound the rock with Tyreek Taylor and Lito Lozano because the backup quarterback, Jefferson, is not good. So they're not going to throw the football too much. But hopefully Owen Black stays out of trouble this time and the Aggies can get back on track because we all know that UC Davis is one of the top teams in the Pac-10 and in our dynasty in a whole. So I'm looking for them to come back out and finish strong against the Hornets. Game number 6, the Southern Utah Thunderbirds travel to take on the Northern Arizona Lumberjacks. I've got the Thunderbirds winning this one 38-20. I feel like we haven't seen a Thunderbird game in a couple weeks, but it's been a while. It'll be fun to play with them again. And game number 7, North Dakota State travels to take on very dangerous Western Carolina Catamounts, and I've got the Catamounts winning that one 38-28. Their offense is explosive, and I don't think the secondary of North Dakota State can hang with them. Game number 8, Portland State travels to take on the Cal Poly Mustangs. I got the Mustangs winning this one 41-24. And even if Alexander Connor gets suspended in this game, they have Eric Spears Jr., so I think the Cal Poly Mustangs will do just fine. So I don't think we're going to have another UC Davis, Portland State type game. Game number 9, the Southeast Missouri Redhawks travel to take on Big 12 opponent VMI, and I've got the Keydets winning 45-17. If their offense is full and they're all on the field, they are very dangerous, and I think they're going to continue blowing out conference opponents. Our final game of week number 8 will be the South Dakota State Jackrabbits traveling to take on Big 12 opponent UT Chattanooga, and I've got the Jackrabbits getting back on track after a close loss to the Western Carolina Catamounts. I have them winning this one 42-24. But that is going to do it for our Taking a Look at the Nation Week 7 recap and Week 8 predictions. I hope you guys put your own predictions down in the comments section below. I look forward to that. If you have a head coach or a player in this dynasty, leave some quotes down below. and I will get those into the games for this upcoming week. Well, that's it for me today, guys. I hope you guys have a fantastic week. Take it easy, guys.